Right. So welcome back to another episode, if you want to call it that, of the First and 35 podcast. I'm your host, and the last one remaining, and the attempt of trying to get a sports podcast going, Gus Cousins. The other two people I was working with, my two colleagues, flew the coop. They've decided they've had enough. So whether that's permanent or not, that's remains to be seen. But in the meantime, I'm the only one left. Whether I like it or not doesn't really matter. But here I am because, I like to think I actually have a little bit of commitment in the middle of all this, the world going to hell, and, we're all bored out of our minds. And, news came out the other day that Amazon had completely run out of podcast microphones. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Everyone's trying to steal this idea, including us. Or me, I guess now. But with that all being said, I don't actually know how this is going to go because for the longest time, I relied on the administrator we had to manage, quote unquote, all of the technical stuff, uploading it, editing it, even the little amount of editing that actually occurred, putting it on YouTube, adding the pictures, even though no one actually looks at them, adding the descriptions that no one reads, filling it out to make it look kind of semi-professional, even though no one actually, obviously, watched us or listened to us, because we went nowhere with this, and 66.6% of the team quit. So with that all being said, I'm still here. I'll be here for quite a while in the next few weeks, and maybe a little bit more after that, strictly because I'm just so goddamn bored, and I think it'll get something for me to do outside of sleeping and binging TV, which I think it'll be nice. I don't actually know if this will even upload properly. I don't even know at this moment if I can get it to upload properly. After this, I'm gonna go binge a bunch of YouTube videos on how to edit videos and edit audio and all that, because I'm completely clueless on that front. But I guess it'll be a good learning experience for me, even if I don't manage to get it up. So, who knows? Maybe you'll never actually hear this, but if you do, it means I figured something out and I'm not a complete idiot. But, yeah, so I'm going to be the only one here for the next while. We're going to try and, I keep saying we, but it's not we anymore. I am going to try and spice things up and make things interesting as the weeks go on, because everyone knows we're all just stuck inside right now. There's, no sports really going on. The few moves that were made in the last week I'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, there's not a whole lot going on, so I figure no matter how much of a joke this podcast may be, and the fact that no one's listening to it, and that 2 to 3 people on here quit for one reason or another, I think out of spite, I'm gonna try and keep things going, and maybe try and get get a call in somebody here and there. We originally had planned that we were gonna go down to spring training, me and my ex-co-host, to find and talk to Anthony Bass, Blue Jays reliever, and Jordan Romano, Canadian Blue Jays reliever, and now obviously that hasn't happened because of this worldwide pandemic. So what I'm thinking is maybe we can try and get one or two of these guys on like a Skype call or something to make things a little bit interesting, to have something to talk about, and maybe that'll bring one or two of my ex-colleagues out of retirement and back into the whole fold to be around for that. But until that happens, it's just going to be me talking about pretty much whatever and going through the minor news, weekly news in the tiny world of sports as it stands. So that's pretty much a basic rundown of what the hell's happening with this. I have a feeling I'll probably end up calling this first, if I can get it on YouTube, like season 3 or something, even though, really isn't even a season. It's just a new slide, a new start, or a new attempt anyways, at running the show here. But with that all being said, I think what I'll do is I'll just run through, the very small amount of news, and then probably just talk for a little bit, because there's nothing going on. So everyone has all the time in the world. But with that being said, as I've said, there's very few pieces of news floating around, a lot of speculation about when sports leagues, the NHL and the MLB in particular, will come back into the fold and start playing games again, if that happens, when it'll happen, and so forth. But in the meantime, not a whole lot's going on in the baseball world specifically, just a few pieces of news to announce. A couple of tragic deaths, again, as it's now becoming a theme every week that's being announced, which is unfortunate, but I got to mention it just because I feel obligated to. But to begin with, ex-Boston Red Sox right-handed reliever Austin Maddox announced his retirement very early from baseball. He's only 28. He was a third-round pick by the Red Sox in 2012. Appeared in only 13 games. Had a .52 ERA, which looks nice. But in the minors, he couldn't get it together in the 18-19 seasons. He battled tons of injuries, couldn't stay healthy. And the Red Sox ultimately released him. He was in their organization his entire career, and he's only 28, as I said. So it's unfortunate that it couldn't all work out for him. But it is what it is, and I wouldn't be surprised to see him try and pitch, make a comeback in an indie league someday, because he had very high expectations for him coming out of the third round, and that .52 ERA in 13 major league games is pretty damn good. And I know ERA is not a stat that you want to evaluate everyone on anymore, but it's a good stat nonetheless, and he had a good promise too. But yeah, he's another one of these guys whose career is probably going to be cut short with injury, which is just unfortunate to see, no matter how good or bad the player is, because they've devoted so much time and effort into playing the game, that to just get it all axed and cut off by some injury, some form of being hurt, is just depressing to see. On the flip side, Steve Pearce, the ex-Blue Jay, announced his retirement as well. He's 37, so he had a nice long career in the major leagues. When he was 35, he won his first real large accolade in the league. He won the World Series MVP for the Boston Red Sox, the big series, him and the Dodgers. 2 years later, he retires, obviously now. He played in all five American League East teams during his time in the major leagues. He, longtime Baltimore Oriole, had his best offensive year there, I believe, hit 21 home runs and like 81 RBIs. And some year earlier on, and then he bounced around between obviously the Blue Jays, where he found success that one magical week where he hit both 2 grand slams, one of which was a walk-off, I believe. The Yankees, the Red Sox, obviously, the Rays much earlier on. He's been around and he's had a very nice career. He was never much of a home run hitter. He had those couple good seasons. I think he ended his career with 91 home runs. But he was a nice solid piece. Even at the ripe old age of 35, he was producing enough to be the World Series MVP for the Boston Red Sox. So he had a nice career, so congratulations to him. The Blue Jays signed him, I don't know, maybe, 4 years ago, however long ago it was. It worked out for him a little bit, but then he was injured there too. He was an interesting signing that I didn't really agree with at the time, but those 2 moments with him hitting the Grand Slam home runs, coming back against the Angels, I believe, on Canada Day, and then the other game a week before that as well. They were good moments, and he had a good time in Toronto, but ultimately he's decided to call it a career. The 2 more depressing pieces of news, as I mentioned, former Chicago Cub infielder Glenn Beckert passed away due to just natural causes, nothing to do with the coronavirus outbreak. He was 79. He was a 4-time All-Star, Gold Glove winner, solid infielder. His best career year was him hitting .342, second baseman, shortstop type. Not much for power. I think he only hit 22 career home runs in roughly 11 or 12 major league seasons, if I'm not mistaken. But he was a very good, solid hit for contact, got a lot of hits. His strikeout to walk ratio was absurdly good. He was a very solid infielder for a long time for the Cubs, and it's just another unfortunate piece of information that I have to pass along. Along with the fact that ex-Blue Jay infielder Damaso Garcia also passed away. He spent 2 different stints with the Blue Jays, 60s, 70s, 80s, I believe. And he was a nice solid piece for them too. I don't have his age written down in front of me right here, but he was getting up there too. But he loved Toronto. He was one of the fan favorites during that point. I know that. And, it's unfortunate to hear about these passings, especially just coming a week after, the whole Colby Cave incident. 2020 just keeps throwing stuff our way, I guess. But, that was unfortunate to hear about. So thoughts with him, his family, and all his friends. Getting to more, I guess, popular news coverage of baseball, I guess, is the governor of Arizona announced that they would be willing to play a season there using the spring training facilities and Chase Field, of course, under the premise of no fans, starting around early July or late June. Now, that's abundantly interesting because then I believe just a day later, the renowned Dr. Fauci, that's been just circulating the news world in the U.S. and all over the world as well, also said a comment that it seemed doable or something along those lines. Not to quote him directly, but baseball could be back by July 4th. I think that would be absolutely brilliant just because I want it back at some point. But the fact that, in a very close amount of time, that a governor of Arizona, one of the major hot zones in the United States for this outbreak of coronavirus, is saying, yeah, maybe we can do it. And then, one of the top scientists, doctors that's working with, the godforsaken White House right now, and Dr. Fauci is saying, yeah, it might be probably possible eventually too. It's a good sign. It's a step in the right direction, I believe. I think things can only go up from here, obviously, in terms of the sporting world, I mean. So that'll be something interesting to watch. I think everybody would be on board for that. Probably not the players too much, although they would want to play being cramped up, as I've said, over the last couple weeks with the same people in the same clubhouse for months on end, stuck in one tiny spring training facility is probably not something they want to do in their life. But if they want to play, that's probably going to be the way to do it. And then following that up, the MLB said, hey, if we do have a season, we're going to be slicing all your pay salaries in half or so. They're going to be asking for a very large pay cut from the players, strictly because everyone's losing so much money in this coronavirus pandemic that it's going to be hard to, deal with. Obviously, the MLB is nowhere near folding like the XFL was. But it's still billions of dollars being lost in revenue between all the clubs, all the players, everybody. Especially if they play games with no fans, it'll be tough to maintain. That'll be something to watch for as well, though. Moving on to the NHL, very minor things going on there. The Blues signed 3 players. They signed Sammy Blais, defenseman Marco Scandella, and Mackenzie McEwen, all to extensions, re-signing them to extensions. Sammy Blais was 2-year for $3 million. He's only 23. He's a young guy. 13 points in 40 games before the season was cut short this year. Marco Scandella, the most interesting one of the bunch. After he signed that deal, Montreal then acquired the rights to St. Louis's 2021 fourth-round pick because Scandella re-signed with the Blues, a 4-year, $13.1 million deal. He bounced around between Montreal, Buffalo, didn't do anything in Buffalo, refused to play, got traded to Montreal. Did decently there, then Montreal shipped him off for a pick, and now another pick to the Blues, who obviously found someone they like in Scandella. He had 13 points in 62 games. And then the third man of the bunch, probably the lowest on the importance scale, it was signed to a 2-year, $1.8 million deal. I feel like I'm going to butcher his last name again, so I might not even try. Mackenzie McEwen. 7 goals, 3 assists for 10 points in 51 games. I have a feeling I did not pronounce that correctly. The Blue Jackets re-signed starting goalie Younes Korpisalo to a 2-year, $5.6 million deal. He's just 25. Had a great start to the season. Injury riddled near the back end of it. But in 37 games, he had a 2.66 goals against average and a .911 save percentage. One of the many guys that Columbus has in net that'll be part of the future with them. And it's a rather cheap deal. It's a short-term deal. It's a see what you can do. And obviously, Korpisalo is probably going to bet on himself too. Once the 2 years are up, if he keeps playing like this, he could be in for a much larger payday. But the Blue Jackets wanted to get that done. Andrei Markov, the longtime Montreal Canadian, announced his retirement yesterday. He's 41 now. He played 990 National Hockey League games over 16 seasons, amassing for 119 goals and 453 assists for a total of 572 points, just 10 games shy of the 1,000 game mark. His last season he spent in Russia. He never hit the 1,000 game mark in the NHL, but obviously that's not of too much significance for him. If you remember, his parting ways with Montreal was a little bit iffy. He was asking for a lot of money. Montreal said, no way. What the hell? Why do you think you're worth that much? Go away. Pretty much, and that's what happened, and we never heard from him again, really. Kris Versteeg also announced his retirement. He's 33, just 33. Over 11 seasons, played in 643 games, had 149 goals and 209 assists for a total of 358 points, mainly with the Chicago Blackhawks. He won the Stanley Cup with them in 2010 and 2015. Super big hit in Chicago. Obviously, he still has a lot of fans there. Briefly with the Toronto Maple Leafs as well, although obviously not to the potential of him playing in Chicago. He was not as good, simply put, playing in Toronto. The Jets and Dustin Bufflin mutually agreed to terminate his contract. This happened way too long. This took way too long to occur. Months ago, before the season start, this news came out that it was the Jets. Bufflin was taking leave of absence. What the hell's going on? Where's he going to go and all that? Obviously now they finally terminated the contract. I don't expect him to be anywhere near National Hockey League rink to play in for the rest of his career. There's not a whole lot of news on this because details haven't really come out on it. They've been really scarce about people releasing information. But in essence, both the Jets and Dustin said, yeah, we didn't want this to happen, but it's happening, which is a nice theory, but obviously something triggered it to have this all occur. And I think eventually it'll come out what that was, what happened between him and the team, but I wouldn't expect it to be happening anytime soon. And I think, personally speaking, it's very unlikely for him to return to the NHL ever again as a player, anyways, just because of there's so many unknowns in this case that teams obviously wouldn't know either. And I think you can't take a chance on someone like that where he just opted out of a contract out of the blue and didn't tell anyone, screwed over a team for a couple months, and then decide, yeah, I'm just done. So I would not bet on him ever returning to the NHL again. But hey, that's just me. The NHL also announced they would be willing to delay the start of the 2020-21 season in an effort to complete this current season, which is currently on hiatus. They want to come up with a new and fair format to help the teams that were on the cusp of being in the playoffs. The Florida Panthers, for example. Carolina is a good one. Columbus, who was dogging it out there. So teams like that, they don't want to have a cut and dry situation where if you're in, you're in, and if you're not, you're not. One way or another, if the season does get back going, they are going to have to find a way to, whether it's part of the regular season that's completed, an expanded playoff format, something like that, along those lines, that they'll have to deal with just simply because everyone's going to lose their minds if they don't have the opportunity to get in. Florida would be haywire down there. It would be madness, at least in the front office. And I think, you just can't have that. So I think it's good that they said we're willing to bump it back. It's good that they said we're willing to try and make it fair. It's nice in speech. It's harder to do in written down and actually happening. So we'll have to wait and see for, if that takes any shape. I'm still not buying the fact that I think hockey will be back. I think it's probably better in general if they wait till the 2020-21 season. That being said, I don't think they will because a lot of people do just want hockey back, which is nice in theory, but if you're underprepared, it could go really, really badly, as I talked about last week. If you are not ready for something bad to happen, and it happens, you are screwed so many ways. So I think it'd probably be better to play it safe and deal with it next season, but I guess we'll have to wait and see what the National Hockey League makes as their decision. Jumping to the NFL, really the biggest news of the week overall was that the Panthers re-signed their star 23-year-old running back Christian McCaffrey to a 4-year, $64 million deal. He was the 8th overall pick by Carolina in 2017. Last season, he amassed just over 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns on the ground, while also amassing just over 1,000 yards and four touchdowns receiving. He's one of the only players in recent history to get to the 1,000 plus yard plateau on both catching and receiving. He was the biggest part of the Carolina offense all season long. This new deal makes him the highest paid running back in NFL history, with teams more recently worrying about spending too much money on running backs, breaking down, especially older ones. But I think at 23, Christian McCaffrey has been so dominant in his few seasons in the NFL that I think it's really, really going to be worth it for them, and especially when they're trying to rebuild with a young team under a new head coach, no Cam Newton. I think it's going to be, he's obviously going to be the biggest part of that offense for quite a long time now. And I don't think it was an overpay at all. I think he's completely worth every cent of it. I think it's a lot of money, but I also think it's the NFL, and people hand out ridiculous contracts all the time. But I think this is going to be one of those that really definitely pays off in the long run for both McCaffrey and the Panthers, because McCaffrey will only be 27 or 28 when his contract is over. He can still get another very large deal if Carolina does not want to re-sign him. So I think it's beneficial for him to make a lot of money in the interim, while also coming out of this deal knowing that I'm still on the right side of 30. Teams are still going to want to pay for my services. So I think it's overall financially a really, really good decision for both him and the club. On the flip side, the Bears released a player. They released tight end Trey Burton after 2 or 3 seasons with the team. He's 28. He's really best known for his part in the magical Philadelphia Eagles play with Nick Foles. He was the guy who tossed Nick Foles the football in the Super Bowl for the touchdown. Obviously, the Bears now have Jimmy Graham, who they view as a higher threat, a better threat, better target than Trey Burton. 2 years ago, Burton came out on the show with the Chicago Bears, did really, really well. Last season, injury riddled, didn't do anything at all, really, and they feel that it's time to move on. I believe Trey Burton will obviously get a job somewhere else. I wouldn't be surprised to see him going to Green Bay. I think he would be a really, really good fit there for Rodgers and the Packers. But regardless, I think he definitely will be a part of some team moving forward, and it's just a matter of which team is that and when do they sign him, because he is still only 28. The Browns, quote-unquote, released new uniforms a few days ago. They didn't really release anything new about it. They're just saying we're going back to the uniforms we used prior to the 2015 change, back to the brown and white as the two base colors. They showed 4 different uniform combinations. They've completely scrapped the going all orange look that plagued them the last couple of years, to be quite honest. It wasn't a good look. But in essence, they're the exact same thing. I believe there are a couple changes in the font, maybe on the helmet. But in general, if you had a 2015 jersey or a 2014 jersey or many jerseys years prior to that, it's pretty much the exact same thing. I believe they also brought back an all brown look as their alternate jersey. I think that'll be interesting just because I think having an all brown jersey is really, really goddamn weird. It looks like you're doused in shit, to be quite honest with you. And I think it's probably not a good decision, but it's been a lifetime pain and suffering in Cleveland, so why not look like it, I guess. But I've never really liked the Cleveland jerseys. I don't like a lot of NFL jerseys, to be quite honest with you. But I think the all brown look doesn't look very good. I think their white one, with a little bit of orange dotting throughout it, and the brown pants maybe looks good. But obviously, I'm no genius. I'm just some guy who judges everybody and everything way too much. With that being said, another piece of tragic news came out of the NFL. Former Seahawks quarterback Tarvaris Jackson was killed in a car crash the other day. He was only 36. He was best known to be a lifetime, pretty much backup quarterback. However, in the 2011 season, the year between the transition of Matt Hasselbeck to Russell Wilson in Seattle, he started all the games for Seattle, went 7-7. Obviously, didn't do a great enough job, but he stuck around, hung out. He was. I want to almost compare him to a better Brian Hoyer, just because of the amount of time he spent backing up quarterbacks, however, not really getting a shot to play. I believe he had 34 starts over 10 seasons, which obviously isn't a lot. He was a late round draft pick. I don't want to get into all the stats just because they're not that great, but it doesn't matter who it is. It's always unfortunate to hear about an athlete passing away, especially someone so young. At 36, if he didn't retire, his age, strictly speaking, he's young enough to have kept playing. So it's just unfortunate to hear. And obviously, this is again not related to the whole coronavirus thing. It was in a car crash, tragically. So we wish the best for his family, and all that. For the first time in quite a number of weeks, it feels like there was actually a piece of basketball news, and I was really enjoying myself, not having to worry about anything basketball related, because I don't know anything about it outside of Toronto. I don't really like too much of it outside of Toronto. I used to rely on one of my co-hosts to do most of the talking about it, but then obviously the basketball kind of stopped, and so there was a minimum amount of news. We didn't really need to know too much about it. The few things that we did, I just Googled up right before we started recording, kind of learned stuff that way. But now that he's gone, I have no idea who this is, but allegedly, He's the number one recruit coming out of high school in the U.S., so I guess that means he's kind of good. His name is Jalen Green. He plans to skip college to go straight to the J League. He's only 18 in the G League. Excuse me. He will be paid 500,000, and then he will re-enter the NBA draft in 2021. Apparently, he was the consensus one of the number one prospect coming out of high school, and obviously the U.S. because the NCAA is so ridiculously messed up. Everyone's trying to grab him, and no one really cares what he wants. Every school pretty much was going after him, and I believe he narrowed it down to two. It doesn't matter anymore because he's going through the G League program that the NBA set up to help guys like this in 2018. But I know nothing about it, but allegedly he's really, really good. So good for him, I guess. Hey, I mean, if I had the opportunity to either get paid 500,000 play sports league program, and obviously that's for elite, high level guys coming out of high school, and I definitely, most certainly, would not be that guy. But I think it's a good program. I think it's maybe a little excessive because the 500,000 was jumped significantly up from the 125,000 prior at the beginning of this idea of the G League program. So I think it's probably a good decision for him. I don't think it'll hurt his draft chances at all. I think if he balls out in the G League, I think he'll be easily one of the top picks in the draft in 2021. But I guess we'll just have to wait and see. This will probably be the only time for well over a year, I guess, that you'll ever hear his name mentioned by me, because once he goes to the G League, I really am going to stop paying attention to anything and everything about him. With that all being said, I think we're at like just under 27 minutes here of me blabbering away. There's really no other piece of news to talk about, strictly because everyone, as I keep saying week after week, stuck inside. Nobody's doing a whole lot. I think the St. Louis Blues blew everybody out of the water by their signing of 3 guys last week. I believe MLB transactions outside of retirements have been frozen, I think. So I don't even think anything can happen on that front. It's really just focusing on when do we think these leagues will come back, if they will come back, and how they'll come back. And that's really the only thing that's the first question on everybody's mind is, how's this going to work? Is it going to work? What's going to happen? And obviously no one has the answers to those questions. But I think as the timeline progresses further and further down the road, I think when you have guys like Dr. Fauci saying, yes, it's possible we could have baseball back July 4th, I think that's great news. Strictly because he's he's one of the highest level guys. He's one of the most knowledgeable guys, on this issue, this pandemic. Whether people want to believe him or not, it's not my problem, but he's right. So I think that's a good sign. I think it's a good sign that the governor is saying we can get baseball going here in a few months. And I think after that, it's really just, how the MLBPA will handle it. Will they want to do it? Or are they going to put up a fight? I don't know any of it because this is so unpredictable. We've never been in this situation before. And I think it's just a waiting game. And I know I keep saying that, and it's disappointing, especially for me, because I have nothing to talk about. But I think it is what it is in this case, and it's literally that. We have no idea what anything's going to happen, and obviously as soon as news breaks, everyone's going to go nuts. It doesn't help that these pansies down in Florida or in Jacksonville are deciding to open up their beaches again, and then one day after doing that, there's like a massive, I think it was like 1,200, an uptick of 1,200 cases of coronavirus. And those losers down there just need to get their act together, and it certainly doesn't help this dumbass in the White House isn't doing anything. Not to go on a tangent about slandering the U.S., but I mean, come on, guys. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely insane. You want sports back, and you're opening beaches down there, and the fact that all these morons are actually going to the beaches is just nuts. Like, it's no common sense from the government, no common sense from the people living down there. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care what your reason is for going to the beach. You shouldn't do it. If the government doesn't have common sense, then you should try to think about what a good decision might be. And it certainly isn't going sun tanning on a beach with people infected with the virus all around you. It's just such a terrible decision. And I think it's going to be a long, long time before the U.S. gets their act together, if they do get their act together. And I certainly don't think that opening beaches in places, reopening restaurants, reopening people's jobs is the right decision. Everyone's seen now these liberate Michigan, liberate this, liberate that. What in the hell are you talking about in the US? Like, everyone, the irony of people, there was a picture of someone holding up a sign at a protest. I want to say it's in Michigan the other day. He was holding up a sign that just read, like, oh, COVID, it's fake, it's not real, or all that, which is completely ignorant and stupid, which is just pretty much common nowadays down in the U.S. But then you look at what he's wearing, and he's wearing a full-on hazmat suit with a mask on it and protective gloves and everything. It's like the first question you should ask is, okay, if you think this is so fake and so overblown, blown out of proportion, why are you wearing all that? Like, why are you being so prepared then and cautious if you firmly believe that it's not actually real? Um, and I just think it's ridiculous. I think people need to wake up. I think it's stupid that me as a 17-year-old here has more goddamn common sense than like the majority, it feels like, the United States population. Like, it's nuts. It's nuts. And I don't even know what to think because it's so absurdly idiotic that no one, I think, should be doing it. No one should think that this would even be a thing. You want to protest about things, you want to protest about problems that you have, fine. Don't do it now, and don't do it about a virus, right? Like, I have no sympathy for any person who goes out to protest. If you complain, I don't even care if you complain slightly on Twitter or something, on social media, about the handling of this, and oh, it's such a big deal and all that. I have no sympathy for you if you end up with the virus. None. None. Nada. It's ridiculous. It's so infuriating to see all these people out there, complaining, armchair warriors, saying, oh, it's such a big deal. Oh, I just want to go back to my job. Okay. You go back to your job, you get coronavirus, and you die. It's a harsh thing to say, but I have no sympathy for you if you do. I have no sympathy if you complain and you go and you get sick and something bad happens. None. Nada. It's entirely half of the problem is dealing with people who are nuts and crazy enough to go out there on their own and say, I'm just going to keep living my life. These religious nut jobs down there, and up here too. I'm not excluding Canada. I think we have a bunch of crazies, mostly conservatives up here, who are just going off the rails. Andrew Scheer's a complete lunatic, but especially in the U.S. because everything's blown up on the news scale there. Religious people, the whole Easter thing. Oh, I'm gonna go to church. Okay, you do that. You go pray to whoever. You'll end up singing pretty goddamn soon. The way this is going, if you don't stay home. So maybe tell him hi and tell him what happened, because it's ridiculous. Everybody that's not staying inside as much as they can, with the exclusion of going on walks or whatnot, is just nuts. And I think it's really, really a large problem, obviously, and I think it has to be dealt with. I don't know how to deal with it, but when it comes to a 17-year-old in Canada who's doing a really bad sports podcast, who's now on a tangent, on a rant about, how the U.S. is handling its population, I think there's a problem there. I don't think that should ever be happening, and I don't think it's a problem on me. I don't think I'm the issue here. I think that's the issue, and I think you have to address it, and I think people in the U.S., like Andrew Cuomo in New York, everyone getting on his ass, is just nuts. I think it's nuts. I don't care what political party you reside by. You do the right thing. I hate Doug Ford with a deep effing passion, but I think he's done a great job of dealing with this virus up here. I don't think it should become a political issue, and obviously it is. That's what it's becoming, because everything is political nowadays, which I think is just brutal, because that's not the fight. You're not fighting, people based on, or you shouldn't be, on what side they stand on. It should be dealing with this whole thing, and everything comes later on. You want to cut funding to the WHO? That's nice. You do that after this. You don't do it now. You don't cut off. The United States is the biggest funding country towards the World Health Organization in the world. You don't cut them off in the middle of a pandemic. You don't do that. You want to fight them after. Do it after the fact. Don't do it now, because it not only screws over you. I don't care how right you think you are. They're supplying equipment and people to countries all around the world. So if you screw over them, you screw over the countries too. You screw over Canada. Canada obviously can't keep up. They can't fill the entire gap the U.S. has had, pouring money into the World Health Organization. They just can't do it. I think it's brutal. I think it's a terrible decision. I know I'm saying don't get all political, and now I'm getting all political here, but I think it doesn't help that there's no sports to talk about, which is why I'm going on about this. But I think that everything's connected. I think each of the problems that I've listed are going to be major parts to deciding when sports will come back, if it comes back this year. I think once all those issues are dealt with at some level, that's when sports can come back. And I think it won't happen until those issues are completely fixed or dealt with, which will be a long time from now, the way it's going. So with that all being said, I don't actually know really how long this is going to go. I don't know. I don't even know, as I've said, if I can get this up. So at this point in time, as I'm recording, I have little to no faith that I can actually figure out how to upload this to our YouTube channel. So I'll probably have to go binge a bunch of, explanation videos about how to do that and how to edit and how to throw up a photo and all that, because I'm on my own now, which I'm not gonna. I talked about that a little bit at the beginning and then kind of just let it be. I think I'll probably be on my own for a while, if not the entire time now, at least until probably baseball starts back up again, and then maybe even after that, when the summer actually hits. So I think that'll be, I don't know, it'll be a task for me to find things to talk about, but I think it's better than sitting around doing nothing. At least me talking to this mic is killing time off in my day. So I really don't know if I had anything better to do anyways right now. With that being said, I think I say the phrase "with that being said" way too much. I think that's probably like the 6th time I've said that this podcast. But yeah, I don't really even know what the plan is. I think as I've said, I'll try to get Romano and Bass or somebody on, even if it's just a Skype call, because I think it'd be interesting. I don't think they have too many other things to do. I think just yesterday on Sportsnet, the Blue Jays were re-airing the 2015 Game 5 bat flip game, and they had guys like home plate umpire Dale Scott, who's now retired, on to talk about it. And I think if that's one of the few times ever that you hear an umpire ever come out, retired or not, and discuss a game like that, and discuss his calls. And I think everybody has way too much time on their hands, so I think I could probably find someone somewhere who wants to have a little chat with a 17-year-old nut like me, and I think that'll be fun. So if that happens, I'll definitely, obviously, see if I can work it out. I don't know if either of the other two people that used to be a part of this would even be up for that. I don't know if I would even be up for them being up for that, but I guess we'll have to wait and see, won't we? So I guess if this manages to upload, and if I can figure out how to consistently do this, record another podcast each week and all that, then I guess you might talk to me next week.